Are you struggling to decide which real estate brokerage is right for you? Hey, I'm Andrew, or you can call me Mongo. I'm a real estate agent and team leader running a top-ranked team here in the state of Florida. Been doing this for about 10 years. In this video, we are going to be going over 5 of the big companies that are out there and then ranking them pros and cons. By the end of this video, you should be able to decide which of these 5 brokerages are best for you and your business. There are going to be 5 brokerages in which we will be discussing in this video. If you'd like to see other brokerages in a video like this, just make sure you comment that down below at some point throughout this video. But the 5 we are going to be going over are Keller Williams, EXP, LPT, Coldwell Banker, and Berkshire Hathaway. Now, I wanted a good mix of cloud-based brokerages and traditional brick and mortar brokerages, so that's kind of why I chose these 5. But of course, there are a lot of really good companies out there. I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible and just give it to you just as I know it, and from the different agents and stuff that I coach around the country and things like that, the information that I've gotten from them, as well as some of my own personal experience. Now, I want to make sure that we're being as unbiased as possible. So I'm going to be ranking or grading these off a few categories. So there are 5 categories, and I'm going to make sure that we are looking at each one of these. So we're going to go over these on every single one of these brokerages. That's the commission and fee structure, training and support, technology and different tools that they are using, company culture and like the work environment that is there. And then lastly, the brand reputation itself and the marketing support that they provide. Now, I'm not going to be ranking these. I'm not going to say this is the best, this is the worst. It's just going to be the information that will help you make a good decision, because for some person, one of these is going to be better, whereas another one would be the worst decision they could make, and vice versa. So we just want to give the information so that you can make an informed decision. So for fun, I thought we'd start with the place that I started when I got licensed back in 2014. Keller Williams Realty. This is where I got my feet wet. This is where I learned. This is where I joined my first team. This is where I started my first team before ultimately bouncing to a few other brokerages. So let me give you my take on Keller Williams. Now, I like starting with the pros, so we're going to start with the pros first. And number one, the first thing that comes to mind when it comes to Keller Williams is the training and support that they provide. Keller Williams does a really good job of offering some pretty strong trainings such as Bold and Ignite. Ignite is like their first start. That's the first thing that you will do right when you come in. And then Bold is kind of their big blanket training that they offer to people that are looking to take their real estate business to the next level. I've taken both. In fact, I've took Bold a few times now, and every single time I learned something in it, and it did increase my business year over year. So in my opinion, they've got a proven track record in their training. They've also got some additional training through what they call KW Maps, and they've got trainers that go all across the country and things like that as well, which is a really big bonus that I didn't see at a lot of the other brokerages that I've joined. Another pro that they do very well is strong company culture. In fact, I joke all the time with my team here that when I was over at Keller Williams, you got in at 8 o'clock, you started dialing by 8:30, and you would just notice the entire place, all doors close right at least by 9, and they don't open again till 11 or 12, and there are people in there constantly prospecting. This is a mindset shift that I wish more real estate agents would have been involved in or see on a day-to-day basis, because I do train not only agents on my team, but also around the country and coach them and things like that. And I notice a lot of people do not put an emphasis on prospecting, yet we're in a sales career and they don't want to prospect, and it's crazy. And Keller Williams brought that into the culture very deeply, at least the brokerage that I was at here. It might not be like that at every Keller Williams. I know they're all a little bit different depending on how they're ran, but that was the culture at the one that I was in. And of course, their technology is another pro. They've got a pretty good internal proprietary technology systems that they use, and they talk with each other fairly well. I know they've had a little bit of issues here and there with one of their big proprietary systems called Command, but it's starting to sound like those problems are starting to even out. And of course, the last pro of Keller Williams is that they do have a large network. So if you've got a referral across the country, you want to make sure that it stays in-house with your brand, then Keller Williams is a great choice because they have a ton of agents. I don't even know how many at this point. I know it's well over 200,000. I actually assume they probably crested 300,000 at this point. So that is a lot of agents out of the 1.5 million or so that are licensed. Well, just like with any company, they've got cons. And the first con is franchise variability. And each of those franchises can be ran a little bit differently. Hence why some of the splits are different. Some of the caps are, well, the splits stay the same, but I mean, the caps are a little bit different between franchises. And on top of that, how they are run internally is different. So just as I mentioned here, where the Keller Williams that I joined here locally in Florida had a great culture of everybody getting into prospect for at least 2 to 3 hours per day, and it was across the board. There were, doors closed with signs on it that said, "Don't come in here unless there's a fire or my kid is hurt," or something like that. Like, they're very clear on it. Just because that's like that here doesn't mean it's going to be like that in each franchise. Then you've got desk fees, another pretty big con, especially for somebody just starting out. I think I was paying somewhere around $250 or $300 for most of my desk fees. I think the basic ones were like $180 to $200, and these vary by franchise as well. And then, of course, if you would like office space, you'd like to get your actual own little office or a little corner to rent, you're going to have to pay for that out of pocket. And at least in the model I was in, or the franchise I was in, it was not cheap. I was paying for a space actually much smaller than what you can see on the camera. It had just enough for a desk. I could touch the wall and the door on either side, and it was costing me $350 per month. And that's all it was. Oh, well, that's not true. There were 2 cabinets in it hanging on the wall as well. Great little space, awesome to be able to get engulfed in the culture, but a little bit pricey for somebody just starting out. And that's not to mention the other fees that they're going to be charging you, such as paper and printing. So the company I was at, it was 10 cents for a black and white copy and 13 cents for a color copy. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're printing out 100 flyers for an open house or door knocking or something like that, it does get expensive pretty quick. In fact, when I started building a team, we only had 4 of us, 4 licensed agents, and our bill for printing was about $750 to $800 every single month. It eventually made us obviously buy our own printer and then do everything on our own, which is perfectly allowable. It's just something to consider if you are going to join that company. Another big con of Keller Williams is the technology adoption. So because of the type of technology they had, and because it is proprietary, it's unique to them, it is a little bit difficult to transition into, especially if you're not super tech savvy. And the last con that I want to talk about is this is more of a traditional model, that brick and mortar model, which isn't necessarily bad, but because they have that brick and mortar sitting there, it's a little bit difficult for them to keep their fees and their caps and everything low. So just keep that in mind. Now let's get on to the commission structure and some of the other things that we need to talk about. Commission structure and fees are, well, they're advertised as a 70-30, which I actually really dislike that this is how they advertise it, because it's not correct. It's actually more of a 64-36, okay? I know that's kind of weird that there's 3 of them, but that's because they charge a 6% franchise fee. So you think it's 70%, but out of that 70%, that franchise fee continues to come out. So you're really only keeping 64% of your money, which is fairly hefty for a big box brokerage that doesn't offer leads or anything like that. Now, some of the franchises will offer leads and stuff, but for the most part, they generally do not. And if they do, they're going to tack another fee on top of it. So that's quite a lot of money to be losing out to a brokerage that you still have to pay for everything individually. And then you've got some other common fees. I've already mentioned a few of them: desk fees, printing fees, management fees, lead fees, and things like that. So they're just sort of putting their hand in their pocket constantly and constantly and constantly. But you still are getting that good training, so it's not a terrible place to start off at first. Now, if you're a new agent listening to this and you're trying to figure it out based on these videos, just keep in mind that the split shouldn't matter to you right now. The biggest thing you should be focused on is which one is going to get you trained up and which one's going to get you profitable faster. You can always swap brokerages down the road. Now, we talked about some of the training and support, but I'm going to touch on them again. So we've got the Keller Williams University, we've got Keller Williams Maps, we've got the Ignite, we've got Bold. You'll also have the people traveling if your franchise is paying for it to come through and speak to each of the people there. Now, when it comes to the culture and work environment, I would consider Keller Williams to be extremely strong. In fact, probably one of the strongest ones I have worked at personally, but that doesn't mean that there aren't better ones out there. Another cool thing with their culture is that they do seem to be a little bit collaborative. So a lot of brokerages, you're almost the enemy of the person next to you. You don't really want them to overhear who you're talking to, how you're talking to them, what prospecting types you're doing, and things like that. But at Keller Williams, I never really got that feeling. Nobody was ever looking over my shoulder to see what they could take from me. And that is something that a lot of cultures in real estate brokerages end up getting built up. And that is something you will see at a lot of real estate brokerages. So sometimes you have to watch your back. As far as brand reputation, I think it's pretty obvious. Anybody watching this that knows anything about Keller Williams, that has heard the name before, they do have a great brand, and their leadership is pretty strong. In fact, one of the greatest real estate books ever created was created by the old CEO of that company. I don't think he is still the CEO now. I'm not really sure. I don't really follow their structure or anything, but there's a lot of good brand recognition there. Marketing support at Keller Williams, though, is a little bit lacking. Most franchises don't have individual marketing people to kind of help you. Then they also don't generally have a large staff that can help you with all the little things you need, visuals, graphics, flyers, things like that. Almost everything is done on its own. And because of that, I think that's why so many of these cloud-based brokerages are coming in and taking a lot of the Keller Williams agents. Because at that split model with the limited support with marketing and direct stuff, they figure, hey, why don't I just go out on one of these 100% models, one of these other brokerages, cloud-based brokerages, things like that, that we don't have to worry about a brick and mortar, because that's what you're paying for in that split. And if you're not somebody that comes into the office anyway, then that is definitely not going to feel good. Let's go on to brokerage number 2, LPT Realty. LPT Realty has been shaking things up with their speed of getting up to 10,000 agents. That is generally the benchmark to start calling it what I like to call a big box brokerage, even though 10,000 agents is nowhere near the 300,000 I think that Keller Williams has, or somewhere around there. That is still kind of the benchmark of how quickly a brokerage is going. And LPT Realty has absolutely demolished, as far as I'm aware, every single record on that. They got to 10,000 agents in under 2 years, whereas the previous record holder, I think, was 7 or 9 over at eXp Realty. That is a really, really big delta to beat. I mean, that is a lot. Now, obviously, eXp was changing or setting the pathway for it, so it was a little bit easier to come up. But when you consider that LPT Realty only started out in a single state, and by the time they got to 10,000 agents, they weren't even open in a quarter of the country yet. I mean, only a quarter of the country they were open in yet. It makes you wonder what would have happened if they opened up all 50 states immediately. So let's get into some of the pros of LPT Realty. First and foremost, they've got a unique business model. They've completely flipped the game a little bit. So it kind of went from Keller Williams was the original, sort of unique business model. And then eXp came up with the cloud-based brokerage. It kind of ripped off a lot of what Keller Williams had. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I actually mean that in a great way. And they paved a great way there. And then LPT came in again and changed it up even more. And I'll talk about how they did that here in a minute, because it's actually pretty interesting. Then, of course, they've got lower fees than most of their competitors. In fact, there's no sign-on fee and no monthly fee at all, making this a phenomenal place for new agents, because you're not going to be shelling out a ton of money just being as you're waiting for your business to grow. After you've already spent everything on your testing and to get licensed and your MLS and your Supra and all the different things you got to pay for, having a desk fee when you're not making any money really hurts. Then, of course, they've got the growing presence. They are growing very quickly. In fact, they're purposely opening up state by state in a slow cadence so that they could keep the growth down. Isn't that crazy? They actually want to make sure that they're able to provide phenomenal services as they're growing, instead of growing too big for their britches and then having a bunch of complaints and agents leave the brokerage. Another great thing that they have is the supportive community. It is absolutely crazy what I am seeing. Now, I am biased. I am LPT Realty, so keep that in mind as I'm going through here. But I'm trying to take the biasness out of this video. But the collaboration is better here than any other brokerage I've been at. Now, in all fairness, I've only been to 4 brokerages, but that's a pretty big statement, especially being that LPT is only a little over 2 years old. And lastly, the flexible commission plans, which I will get into in just a second. This is the first company I'm aware of that does it like this, and I love it. But with all the pros, there are cons, so let's get into those. First, limited market presence. They're not open in all 50 states, so you might love everything that you hear here, but if your state's not open, you're not able to join. Con number 2 is that they are a newer company, which comes with its own challenges there. Which leads into number 3, scaling challenges. As they are scaling up, and they're scaling very quickly, they're having to build in a lot of admin staff to help with that. And when you're adding a whole bunch of new admin staff and they are new and have not been sitting inside of the platform for a while, that could cause some issues. Although I'm actually really surprised that we haven't seen a ton of them yet. Every once in a while, something will come in that it's like, oh, hey, something that used to take 2 days is taking 4 days now. But that's about the worst that I've seen. Maybe as they continue growing, we'll see more of these growing pains, but so far it's been limited. The fourth con is that their technology integration is still developing. They don't really have a whole lot of proprietary things right now. Now they do, they have a few things, but because it is still a newer company, they're not up and running to its full capacity. It doesn't have those legs, right? That it's been out for a while. Like Keller Williams has that command that's been out for, 5, 6, 7 years. I don't know how long at this point. Whereas some of the proprietary stuff at LPT, that everybody's just getting their feet wet with it, which is actually kind of nice in a certain aspect because we get to help move that change, but disadvantageous for people that maybe just want to just get the ground running with all of their technology. Now, none of the technology clashes or anything like that. It's just not 100% perfect right now. But luckily, the CEO of the company has his hands in that directly and is building some pretty cool stuff that's going to change the game later. I bet this is the last time that I do this video where that's going to be a con here. I think later the technology will be a huge pro and surpass most of the other brokerages. And the last con is that it is a lesser known brand. Market awareness around your brand is still important to some people. Now, for the most part, the consumer has understood that it's the agent that matters, not the company, but there are still some people out there in a more traditional mindset that think the bigger box brokerages are going to offer a little bit more to them and give them a better deal on their home. So let's get into the commission structure. This is one of the coolest things about LPT Realty is that there's not just one commission structure to go to. There's actually about 3 or 4, but I'm going to get into the main 2 because the other ones are kind of like super specific and, for brokerage owners or for somebody in a luxury brand, things like that. But the 2 big commission structures that you choose as soon as you join LPT Realty are the Business Builder Plan and the Revenue Share Builder Plan. So in the Business Builder Plan, you pay $500 per transaction until you pay in a total of $5,000. You can do the math. That is 10 transactions. Once that happens, you are capped. Now, they do have a franchise fee or a company fee of $195 that gets passed to the consumer. If the consumer cannot pay for it, let's say in a VA situation, because a veteran is not allowed to pay any commission of any kind, then the agent actually has to pay that. Then you've got the Revenue Builder Plan where you're on an 80-20 split, so you're going to pay 20% of your commission up until you cap at $15,000. Once you pay in $15,000, you no longer have to pay for that fee for that year. And there's pros and cons to each side. The Business Builder Plan just keeps fees low. You don't really have to worry about too much. This is great for most agents that don't want to recruit. And then, of course, a Revenue Share Building Plan will allow you to gain recruitment money or hybrid share model money, if you will, where the company basically takes 50% of all the money they earn and divvy it down to people that help bring in somebody into that company. So if you are somebody that's going after that rev share, just like EXP has, and a lot of the other brokerages, I'm just naming EXP because it's one of the most well known for it, Keller Williams as well, they've got that MLM model, which I forgot to mention in the last section, by the way. Keller Williams also has one, but theirs is off, I believe it's called profit share, where you can only make money if the franchise is profitable. I had multiple people underneath me at Keller Williams and never saw a dime because as soon as they realized they weren't profitable, they would invest into something. That's kind of a problem if you're looking at earning some extra income from this. But at LPT Realty, they do give up that 50% through 7 different levels. So if you want to do that, you have to be on the revenue plan in order to build that up. Now, you can build it on either plan, but you can't collect on it unless you're in the revenue share model. So you're more than welcome to build it in the Business Builder, and once you get 10, 20 people underneath you and you'd like to start collecting some of those checks, then you'll move over into the revenue share plan because you can swap between the two, which makes it a brokerage for life model. That's one of the unique things about it is if you're in growth mode and you're trying to add people to it and you're doing the rev share model thing, okay, cool, you can do that. And then life, hits you in the face and, you get 2 new kids, death in the family or something crazy happens. You just need to take a break from real estate for 6 months, a year. You can always move over here so that you can keep more of that money per sale in your pocket. And outside of that, there are no other fees that you really need to worry about. There's no desk fees. There's no one-time signing on fee. There's no monthly fee. There's none of that stuff whatsoever. So you just get in and you earn money when you earn money, and they're not going to require you to pay out money when you're not making any. When it comes to training and support, LPT has an entire portal of training as well as individual groups that are offering free training all the time. That's one of the things that I am in. I actually offer free training every single week to people that are in my little organization of LPT Realty, as well as a bunch of other coaching students and things like that that have come up to me over the years. And this provides very direct training from people that are actively in the business, giving very, very specific advice on how to do things. This really helps out new agents, experienced agents alike, because you're getting a very dedicated support system where they're showing you exactly how they're doing it, and they're staying on top of the know and passing that information down. And this collaboration seems to be the same across the board here at LPT. They also have stuff for brand new agents. They've got an entire platform for people that are brand new where you get a mentor, you get somebody to call all the time, somebody that you can kind of bounce ideas off of, and a full training program there, as well as follow-on training and 2 meetings per week that generally involve our CEO, Robert Palmer, where he's actually going in there and showing you guys, showing the entire company how to do things. We've got Motivational Monday and First Friday, which happens every single week. And he's generally at most of these unless he's at some big meeting or something like that. And when he's not, they have other people in it as well that offer a little bit of training and guidance. The culture and work environment here at LPT is very collaborative, very, very much so. And it's actually pretty incredible seeing the leadership step in for stuff whenever there is a problem, which does happen. It is a growing business. But you'll actually see our CEO and founder, Robert Palmer, jump in. Hey, yep, we notice this is an issue. We're fixing it right now. Email me at this. Like, he's actually the one in there doing it as well. And this is just a good show of faith, but it shows how much he cares for the company. And that top-down sort of situation and collaboration trickles throughout the entire organization very quickly. But their brand reputation is fairly strong when somebody knows what it is. You know, it wasn't a year ago that somebody would type in some of these forums, what is LPT Realty about? People would be very confused. Hey, who is that? I don't know, the up-and-comer, whatever. But now if you throw LPT Realty in most Facebook groups, real estate Facebook groups, things like that, you're generally going to get the 95% of them knowing exactly who it is because they've shaken up the industry that much. And I am going to do a quick plug here. If you are interested in LPT Realty, obviously you can reach out to me. All of my information is on the screen. I could talk to you all about it and give you my personal experience between this one and 3 other brokerages that I've been at in my 10-year career. But that's not the main intent of this video. The main intent is just to give you information. So let's continue with Coldwell Banker. Now, I've never worked at Coldwell Banker myself personally, but I do have a lot of friends over there, and I've got great respect for the brand. So let's get into it. Pro number 1 is that they do have a well-established brand. Coldwell Banker's been out for a very long time. I would guess somewhere around 1950 or something, maybe older, maybe younger, I'm not sure. They've been around a very long time. And they've got strong training programs. Because they've been out for a very long time, they've been building training programs since day one and continually adding to them, innovating them, changing them, etc. They also have great marketing support. So if you need any help with flyers and things, or really any marketing in general, a lot of Coldwell Banker franchises will actually have a marketing person there, or a team, or somebody you can talk to about really any idea that you've got. And just like Keller Williams, Coldwell Banker has a large network as well, so it does help you when you're trying to find agents all across the country, or maybe even find an agent to kind of mentor under. And Coldwell Banker also has pretty reputable leadership and a pretty strong track record of doing things ethically and right, which is always a pretty good place to be for a company. But the cons. The number 1 con that I see with Coldwell Banker is the fees and commission structure. They are often pretty hefty. They've got to be able to pay for all of the people that they are paying to support you. So that marketing staff and the training managers and things like that, they need to pay those people. So they're going to have to get that money from somewhere. That generally comes at the expense of the agents. Another con is that they do still focus on traditional models, which as the industry is changing and adjusting, they're not changing and adjusting as quickly because they're more focused on the traditional stuff. But if you're somebody that likes a traditional way of doing real estate, it's actually not a bad place to be. Another con is the franchise variability. Very similar to Keller Williams, each franchise can be ran differently, and it's very wild across the board at Coldwell Banker because there's not a lot of franchise similarities all across the board. They're all going to be run differently, and they're all going to provide different things. They're going to provide different stuff in general. I have talked to agents at Coldwell that are in one city, and they're like, My broker doesn't do anything. My split's good, but I've got nobody to talk to. There's no trainers, there's no marketing people. And then we've got ones like here in our local area, our Coldwell Banker here has all of those things, but because of that, they offer hefty splits. And they also offer some pretty cool things like sign-on bonuses for experienced agents where, hey, if you promise to be here for 3-5 years, however long, we're going to pay you up front. But you're eventually going to pay that back in the commission splits. And the last con is their technology. They are considerably slower to respond to technology and add technology into their systems than a lot of the other companies that are on our list today. So let's talk about the commission structure. It generally varies, but the commission structure is going to be anywhere from 50-50 all the way up to about 80-20. There are some people that are going to be above that, but for the most part, that's the range. And to be completely honest, most of it's like 60-40 to 80-20. There's very few that are on the 55-45 or 50-50 split or anything like that. So you are going to push in a considerable amount of money of every transaction. And the worst part is a lot of the models do not offer a capping model, although that has been changing over the last couple of years as more of these cloud-based brokerages have been coming in. But there for a long time, they never cap. So you would end up spending a lot of money on that, even if you were on the 80-20 model, which is not exactly ideal. And then some of the common fees you can expect are just like Keller Williams, office fees, marketing fees, printing out stuff fees, basically anything they can tack a fee onto, they're going to. Their training and support is fairly strong, however, as I mentioned before. So whether you're a new agent or an intermediate or experienced agent, they're going to have some sort of training for you. The company culture, I think, is one of the better ones on this list. I actually really like my Coldwell Banker friends. Now, I've never worked there personally, so I'm just kind of on the outside looking in, but they seem to have a pretty strong culture. They do things together. They mold well together for the most part, and I very rarely hear, at least in my local market, I very rarely hear of agents clashing within one brokerage or trying to backstab each other or taking business from each other, although I'm sure it happens. Maybe I'm just not seeing it. Their brand reputation, of course, is outstanding because they've been around forever. You can't really go anywhere without seeing a Coldwell Banker sign. There's very few cities that they are not having a presence in. Next up is eXp Realty, which is another brokerage I've been in. So in this video, 3 of the 4 brokerages I've been into have been talked about here. I'll probably do one on ERA at some point, maybe a future video if this one goes out well to you guys. So let me know in the comment section if you would like to see more comparison videos and pros and cons like this. But eXp is another great company. Now, before I get into all the pros and cons and all of the information I want to, I am going to say that when I moved over to eXp Realty, I thought that's where I was going to stay for life. In fact, when I was called and told about LPT Realty, I was kind of shaking my head like, no, I'm already good. I'm great. So eXp is an outstanding company despite the pros and cons that we're going to get into here. I really like them, so let's get into the pros. Number 1, they're a cloud-based platform, which helps with some of the other pros that we're going to be talking about here in a moment. Second pro is that they've got an attractive business model, particularly with the commission splits and the rev share money that can be earned. Number 3 is they've got strong training programs as well. You're not going to be left out in the mud at eXp Realty. In fact, I think that their training is almost too much. You could get lost in it and be sitting all day in training courses if you decide to. Number 4 is that they have a growing presence. They were growing very, very quickly, and I'm sure they hold a lot of accolades in the growth spectrum already, which makes the brand a little bit more recognizable. And the last pro is that they do have stock options that you will get for certain awards, essentially, not like awards like you're the best, but like awards like you brought somebody into the company, you hit a certain sales volume or a certain badge or things like that. This is something that LPT Realty has as well that I forgot to mention previously, but it is still a pretty good pro of the company. And then the cons. Number 1, lack of physical offices. For somebody that wants to go into an office and be surrounded by agents every single day, you're not going to get that at eXp Realty. They do have a connection with some of these like workspaces that you can go to that you might bump into another eXp agent from time to time. But in my experience, I don't know anybody that's ever been able to use one. It's generally in the bigger cities. It's not in smaller markets like I am in. So I never got to experience that for myself. And another con is rapid growth issues. Because of their growth and people coming in and out so often, they had a lot of hiccups around then and are still occasionally experiencing that. Another con of eXp is their technology reliance. They rely very heavily on their technology in order to push the company forward. Things like the eXp world, for instance, which it's either a love or a hate thing. When I first got into it, I thought, great, this is a great little spot. There's like a campus that you go into virtual. It's basically like playing The Sims. But that turns a lot of people off because we're here to sell real estate, not play a video game. One of the big cons of EXP is their cultural adaptation challenges. Because they've got so many agents and differing personalities and things like that, there are a lot of clashings within their own communities, which makes that culture not feel as strong as some of these other brands we're talking about today. And last on the con list is their lower brand recognition. Even though they are very big, when you talk to the consumer, a lot of them are still going, huh? Which is wild to me because EXP has been around for a long time. I'm not sure if that's the transaction count per agent that's causing that still kind of question mark when you're talking to the consumer, but it is definitely out there. But it is softening up rapidly, and it's been, a year and a half since I've been over there. So I haven't felt it personally in a year and a half, but I would imagine just like when I was at EXP before, I would go out on listing appointments, go out on buyers, and they would go, "Who are you with?" I would get that a lot, like the head tilt side nod. Maybe after the last year and a half, it's eased up a little bit, or maybe it was just my marketplace and my personal experience, but that is what I noticed while I was there. Now the commission structure, let's get into that. They do an 80-20 model. You keep 80%, they keep 20 until you cap out at $16,000. $16,000, the rest of the year is 100% yours, which means basically after you bring in about, I think it's like $72,000 or $76,000. I used to do videos on this, you'd think I'd remember, but after that, basically everything is in your pocket until you reset at the end of the year. And that's if you're a solo agent. There is no choice in this one. But if you're joining a team, there are two other commission splits that you might be on. If you are in a standard team, then you could be cut down to 80-20 with an $8,000 cap, meaning that you're at a half cap. It's still going to take 20%, but you're going to cap out twice as fast, which is also awesome. And then you've got the mega team where they're going to knock that down even further, still the 80-20, but now that's going to go down to $4,000. Now there's pros and cons of each one of these. I'm not going to get into all the nuances of that. I've got other videos out for that kind of stuff, but that is your commission split model. Now there is one thing that they don't really tell you when you're joining, and that is the fees that they're going to tack on top of it. So you've got their $85 a month cloud brokerage fee, $25 transaction review fee, and $40 risk management fee, which I believe the risk management fee goes away after like $500 or something like that, but it is still something to consider. And then you've got these transaction fees that I believe when I was there, it was $250 per transaction that you have to pay out up until you do like 20 transactions. Then it goes down to $175 for another 30 transactions. And it goes down to $125 or something like that. Don't crucify me in the comments. I might be off a little bit on the numbers, but the point is it stacks up a lot. The last year I was there, for instance, I'm on a $16,000 cap and I tracked everything and I ended up paying $23,000 or $24,000 with all of these extra fees stacking up. So there's something to be said about that. They are sneaky and they are in there. But for most agents, you're not going to have to worry about it because a lot of agents aren't running a team like I am where we're paying out so much because we've got, 4 agents on the team. Now we go into their training and support. Their training and support, as I mentioned before, is outstanding. Like you could literally sit in a class all dang day. They've got producers coming in, giving their information and all this other stuff, but a lot of it happens inside of the world. Now, if you can find the avenues, you can get to the Zoom button and watch it there most of the time. But the point is, their training, there's a lot of it. The downfall of that, though, is you don't know how good the trainer is when they're in there speaking. They're not really vetted that well. So if you just raise your hand and say, I'd love to teach people on this thing that I know, you can generally get onto their training platform and teach people that way, which if you know what you're doing is great, but if you're just spitballing or something very nuanced that isn't going to work in every market, then that's not exactly the best for you, the agent. Now their culture and work environment is decent. I think for the most part, it's pretty good. I did have a little bit of an issue with the culture while I was there because you had so many people, and this is only a size problem. This is going to happen at LPT. It's going to happen any brokerage that gets big. So let's just clear the air there. But because you have so many people, you've got people coming in and complaining on the message boards and workplace or in the world or what have you, and they're complaining about something, and it's just trickling down and just destroying the culture just a little bit. It just doesn't make you feel good. I didn't even want to go into workplace because sometimes I would see these people just complaining about whatever it was in their life. But outside of that, the culture is fairly strong, especially when you're in an in-person interaction or some of their events, which are huge, by the way. You get a lot more of that in-person culture, which I like a lot better at EXP. And when it comes to brand recognition and marketing support, their marketing support is pretty good with most of their stuff. It's not going to be as hands-on as like a Coldwell Banker or some of the other big box brick and mortar chains, but they still have a lot of options out there to help with some of that marketing. All right, let's talk about Berkshire Hathaway. Now, I don't know anything about this from a personal level, as in I have not been there. I just know it from a few friends that I've got that are over there, as well as when I interviewed with them several years back when I was at Keller Williams. We interviewed with them. I'm going to be honest, I did not have a good experience with that interview. The amount of money they were going to take from our team was astonishingly high. But I'm going to set that to the side right now and talk about the pros and cons as I was able to dig them up. So the very first pro is it is a distinguished brand, a lot of luxury. They know the name. They purposely choose a lot of their franchises to go into the luxury space so that they can kind of keep that prestigious brand awareness around them. They've also got extensive resources, which really help. And as I understand it, they've also got some pretty strong training programs, although I don't really have a whole lot of details on that. And the leadership there at Berkshire seems to be fairly experienced, which can be helpful because everything is a top-down sort of situation. And again, as I understand it, they have robust marketing support, although I don't have a whole lot of details on that either. The number one con is higher fees, and I was able to find this across the board with a simple Google search. Their fees are crazy pants. So I'll give you an example of what I was told when I was interviewing, and I don't know if this is the same across the board, but here's what they were going to do for us. We were going to be on a 50-50 model where we give up 50% of our income, and it would raise by 5% for every $100,000 that the company made, which means to get to 55-45, they had to get $100,000. To get from 55 to 60, another $100,000. That is me giving away $200,000 to be on a 60-40 split. Now, that's the heftiest I've ever seen by a landslide, like huge. I'm hoping that they're not all like that, which based on the research I've shown, I think that might have just been the marketplace I was in, or the person that I was talking to was not the best person to talk to, but it was in writing. We did take pictures. I literally had to take pictures of it because I couldn't believe what this guy was telling us. Now, another con is that they're still falling underneath that traditional brick and mortar style model, which is not the best right now. And as we've talked about with some of the other brick and mortars, their franchise variability is high, probably why the one that I was talking to was so high. They were in a very high price point marketplace where the average commission is like the average price point is like $2 million. So they can probably get away with charging a lot more. And lastly, like you've heard on several of these other ones, they've got a slow technology adaptation. Because they're so traditional and they do a lot of things a traditional way, it doesn't seem like they're adapting to technology very quickly. Now, when I looked it up online, the commission structure I saw said 60-40 to 70-30 was about common, but that it did vary wildly. So as I had mentioned before, if I just wanted to get on a 70-30 split, which is still kind of a lot to be taking from somebody, I had to give the company $400,000. That is a lot, where I'm at a company now where I only need to give them $15,000. There's a lot I could do with $385,000 and pour into my business. So for me, it was a hard no without do not pass go. But depending on what you're looking for and what the brand reputation is and the variability in the franchise that you're in, it could be completely different than what I experienced personally. And of course, this does change with performance, very similar to Coldwell Banker. Higher producing people are generally going to start with a better split, although in my case, that wasn't the case. I think we were doing like 30 million at the time when I was interviewing with them, which isn't a whole lot, and probably not a whole lot for them since they were in a marketplace where one sale is worth $2 million. So obviously we weren't as attractive looking to them. Now, some of the other common fees that you're going to get into are the same ones we've talked about with the other brick and mortars. You're going to have desk fees, marketing fees, franchise fees, and things like that. So they are going to put their hands in your pocket a little bit more and more. And these are always so sneaky because when you go talk to them, you're like 70-30, that's pretty good. But when you actually calculate it out and it ends up being 58-42 or something, and I'm just making that number up, of course, then it starts to look way less attractive and it almost feels sneaky in the way that they're doing it. And I'm a really big fan of transparency. I don't like that sneaky stuff. It's just not cool. Now, their training and support seems to be fairly strong where they've got very dedicated training, particularly in the onboarding process, which is great for newer agents. And as I've heard, they've got a wide range of resources to tap into, and they do pretty good at agent growth in general, trying to help out the agent become better and better over time. Now, their culture and work environment seems to be one wrapped around ethics, which is awesome. Really, really love that. And it seems to be pretty strong within their company, although outside of their company, I'm not too sure. Now, I can't speak for all marketplaces, but in some marketplaces, you'll see a lot of complaints on Berkshire Hathaway agents, whereas in other ones, they tend to rank fairly well. But I think you could say that of any of them, so, take that with a grain of salt. They also do seem to have a heavy emphasis on customer service, which is something I really, really like. I don't know what that looks like exactly, but the fact that that came up multiple times during my research says that they're probably doing something right there, and that's good. And when it comes to brand reputation, this one's fairly obvious. Out of all of the ones we talked about, Berkshire Hathaway has a very strong, prestigious brand. Now, it might not be the one that you think of for your everyday household, but when you're thinking of luxury or you're thinking of, a more prestigious home or market, neighborhood, things like that, Berkshire Hathaway is going to stick out to some home sellers and home buyers a little bit more than some of the other brands. In fact, that was one of my issues while I was at EXP, is a lot of people thought that we were some discount brokerage, and I actually got that in face-to-face interactions sometimes where they would say to me, hey, I'm looking for more of a luxury brand instead of whatever EXP is. No knock on EXP, that's just the experience that I had. And Berkshire seems to be dodging that a little bit and seems to have a little bit better reputation there. Have pretty good marketing materials that are a little bit higher quality, which helps with that brand recognition a little bit more and just gives it an overall better feeling, especially for the luxury brands. Now, I don't think Berkshire Hathaway is targeting luxury. I'm not really sure what their overall platform is meant for, but that's what it seems like in our marketplace. Whew, okay, that was a whole bunch out of those 5 brokerages. I hope you learned a lot here. We got Keller Williams, we got EXP, LPT, Coldwell Banker, and Berkshire Hathaway. Please take a second and comment down below if you'd like to see other comparisons with different brokerages. I originally had 10 on my list, but obviously going through it, I was like, this is going to be way too long of a video, so let's knock it down to 5, and it still ended up being pretty long. Maybe I'll do 3 next time, I'm not sure. But hopefully this was as unbiased as I could be. I know that I am with LPT, so that is a little bit hard because I want to scream it from the rooftops. If I'm ranking LPT, like, I'm here for a reason. I absolutely love it, and I was not able to portray all of that in this video. So if you'd like to find out more about LPT Realty in particular, all of my information will pop up on the screen. Call me, text me, throw a carrier pigeon, throw a football with a note on it, throw a brick with a note on it, however you want to get a hold of me, you've got those options. I would love to talk to you about your next move. And if you guys have any other questions, just put them down in the comment section down below and I'll get to them when I can, and I will see you guys next week.